For all of us, each day brings an element of surprise or unknown. For men and women in law enforcement, the unknown comes with inherent potential life-threatening danger. A simple traffic stop could turn deadly, while an armed robbery call could just as well end peacefully. From one incident or accumulating calls, officers have the potential to develop post-traumatic stress disorder. The unpredictability of law enforcement is what draws many to the profession. However, it's also what can perpetuate stress that can build from responding to the variety of calls.
I couldn't even tell you how many violent deaths that I've seen in 15 years. I couldn't even begin to try to recount them.
Sergeant Rich LaBard has worked with the Great Falls Police Department since 2000. In 2004, he responded to a call that changed him forever. Now he talks with fellow law enforcement and citizens about that August incident that would prompt post-traumatic stress disorder.
The call was a male walking down the street shooting people.
LaBard was only blocks away when the call came in and arrived first on scene, parking a lot closer to the threat than he intended.
I made some tactical errors when I arrived on scene, and I didn't know where the threat was any longer. So that was the first thing that kind of put me on shaky ground for that call, is thinking that I was going to get shot when I got out of the car.
The threat was right across the street, and as he approached the house, he saw a man down in the front yard, shot in the chest, and could hear children screaming in the home.
The main thing that derailed me was when I walked past the guy in the yard. He was still alive. He was gasping for air, he was in shock, but he actually reached out and grabbed the cuff of my pants and was trying to get me to help him.
Training for law enforcement teaches officers to continue to the threat.
What I'm picturing is this guy, there's a guy in the house killing people. And so I have to leave this guy who I make eye contact with as I move past him. And I remember having an enormous amount of guilt for not being able to explain to him why. And so I leave him and advance into the house.
What he found was a man who had just moments before shot himself. Other officers who had since arrived proceeded to find the continued sound of screaming kids. LaBard was left in a small, hot kitchen.
The smells were absolutely atrocious in there. The smell of gunpowder, blood, pulverized bone.
He doesn't remember much of that call after that. 5 days after the incident, LaBard got married and essentially blocked the call from his memory. But what he experienced that day stayed with him. 2 years later, his wife noticed changes in him, something he wouldn't see in himself until 2008.
My personality had changed. It wasn't mood swings. It wasn't moody, grouchy. It was I was changing as a person. My behaviors were changing. My speech patterns were changing.
By 2010, a TV show with a similar scenario triggered his first flashback. Later, he responded to a rollover accident where he was forced to make a similar haunting decision as he had done in 2004. LaBard says he was derailing.
My physical symptoms just kept getting more and more intense. I was having a harder time keeping everything in balance. My marriage was starting to fail. I was starting to struggle at work. I started consuming alcohol as a way to control the anxiety and my shaking, trying to use it to help me sleep. Ultimately, what it boiled down to was suicide. I had gotten to the point where I was not contemplating it so much, but I had certainly changed the way I thought about death. I started thinking that there would be peace. I could just shut it all off.
Thankfully, that's not where Sergeant LaBard's story ends. It was a long road as symptoms developed, but he did choose to get help. Join us again Sunday night for the next chapter in Sergeant LaBard's story.